A little urban rooster rings the morning. Breakfast on the rooftop orchard overlooking green. Green as the eve of enlightenment. Green as an old bronze guardian, still pretty. Green as the Emerald City. Green tracks and trams, between curls of orange dawn and underground dams. Scent of soil, potted place. Solar panel with a painted face.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Solacene, the podcast where we imagine a beautiful, sustainable, tactile future. As Aaron alluded to in his poem, painting a picture of what the Solacene, or as we're going to be talking about today, a Solarpunk future could look like.
This is the third episode in like a mini semester that we've done, a 3-week exploration, I suppose, of the Solarpunk aesthetic. First of all, we talked about its general rules and guidelines and kind of what it comprises. And then last week, we broke it down as a genre and tried to create a narrative. And then this week, we're going to be kind of filling that world with technologies because that's really half of the aesthetic. One half solar, second half punk. You and I bring the punk, so today we'll be talking about the solar.
It's true. So we each brought 5 technologies to talk about. We will go back and forth. You start.
Okay, I'm going to start with my most boring ones, just in case people on YouTube are still watching. This will kind of turn them off.
Okay.
It's like the filter. It keeps the real fans. So my most boring one is 3D printers.
Boo.
Which is kind of lame because they are household names today. Mm-hmm. But also I was thinking, conceptually, it's magic.
It is conceptual magic. I was reading a book, a Solarpunk book, and they were talking about, it was written in the 70s, they were kind of talking about 3D printing houses, and it's like, that is kind of magic.
It's magic. I mean, it's something that like in a myth, you'd be like, you go to the wizard and he has this machine or device that he just whispers some words into it. That's how 3D printers work, right?
Yeah.
They just whisper some rhyme into it, and it just composes something out of thin air, even though it's not really out of thin air. The term for it is additive manufacturing.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Well, it's kind of like, because you know how they build things is layer by layer. They grow up like that, kind of. Whereas almost always what we've done through history is take a bigger thing and pluck materials away from it to form something. This is like, I guess it's like baking. I guess baking is also additive manufacturing.
I see.
Or making smoothies. It's like that. So the 3D printers in the Solarpunk world, my primary use for them in terms of individuals would be to help sustain this DIY maker economy, I suppose, and also fixer economy. Because we talked last week about how really the archetypical hero of a Solarpunk story is the maker hero, the person who meddles and fiddles and alters devices, especially electronics. But this is not so easy a thing to do unless you are very well equipped with tools and screws, nuts, bolts, and cables.
Well, we have a 3D printing friend. I feel like every person has one of those.
Yeah.
Person who has the 3D printer, and he was talking about how he needed a part for his bike, so he just 3D printed it.
Exactly.
And made it fit in without tools or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. Because
it is.
It saves resources.
It's one of the things that makes me the most reticent, to put it lightly, and just livid, to put it heavily, to do any kind of fixing work. Mm-hmm. Because always they're like, oh no, I needed the 1/16th screw. I have the 1/15th. That you can't do that. And so it's just constant runs to a hardware store, or probably most people just buy it online, and I don't blame them. Mm-hmm. But this is like, whip it up. In the Solarpunk future, it would be a lot quicker than it is right now, because I think now it takes a long time. And also, crucially, it wouldn't just be plastic polymers, which is what is really the material usage that your average Joe with a 3D printer, so I guess not that average, will use today. Mm-hmm. It's actually like already people can use metal, concrete, wood, these kind of things, but it's more like industrial uses. I was reading that NASA made they 3D printed a rocket fuel pump.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's like you can do these kind of things, but they take a lot of technologies and a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And so I think we can kind of say in a plausible future that, you know how technologies work, they become more consumer friendly, it just becomes more convenient. And actually you can just beep, boop, boop like a microwave and make a screw. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I was envisioning it.
I think it'll always require a bit of knowledge of space and like dimensions and stuff.
Yeah.
But that will just come with them being more widely used. We'll adapt that knowledge. Because think about how much knowledge we have concerning electronics. Not necessarily how to fix them, but how to function a whole range of different devices.
Yeah.
And that came pretty quickly, and it's just now ingrained in people.
It's true.
So I think if these technologies like 3D printing and some of the other ones we talk about, they require like a decent amount of knowledge, even I think in the future, to handle, it'll just be ingrained in us.
But what I love about it is that I love technology that in some way, even if it is maybe a tool for convenience, also helps teach you things. And I think that this would help teach you things, for one thing, because it would encourage more people to try and fix things. So it would help them learn about torque and wrenches, similar to how an oven might help someone learn about baking.
It's true.
You know what I mean? And I had a mini list of things that have been 3D printed, because I wasn't 100% for this, because I do think it, in some ways, it takes away some of the joy of building, and it automates it to an extent that might be a continuation of the current trend, taking things out of humans' hands, in a sense.
For sure.
So here's a list, and you can just say yes or no. Food.
No.
That's a thing. Homes.
Yes.
You think homes should be 3D printed?
I think they should be able to be 3D printed.
Yeah, the ability, I guess. Prosthetic body parts.
Yes.
Clothes.
Yes.
A replacement tortoise shell. It's been done. I say yes.
I guess, yeah.
What else are you going to make it out of? Paper mache?
It's true.
Violins?
No.
Okay. But yeah, I think these are neat science and magic, and I chose them to start the conversation because it was a difficult 5 things for me to find, because in the future, I kind of want technologies to be a little bit less intrusive. So it was less so about picking 5 annoyances in life that I think should be replaced by new technologies, and more picking 5 technologies that I think could be replaced with less intrusive technologies, if that makes sense. So this is kind of, for me, replacing the quick Amazon haul or general online shopping for little annoying things that a phone case, a phone holder, something like that you can't find in person. Yeah,
I think in the Solarpunk community, 3D printing is quite often touted as the most common technology that will be present. However, within the Solarpunk camp, there are 2 types of people. There's the people who are very much more probably like you and I, like we should just learn how to use our hands and build with wood and build with natural materials. And there's those who are like, no, the robots should do everything like that for us. And I think both of those can exist happily, like they kind of do today. There's the people who are very techy, who just love using AI for everything. And there's those of us who would rather do anything but that. And we can exist harmoniously as long as you respect each other. And I think in the Solarpunk future, people will have a bit more of an awareness of still wanting to be competent and not wanting to have everything outsourced. And yeah, there's definitely cool plastic technologies that could be used and applied to 3D printing, like plastic made out of cellulose that can then be decomposed when it comes in contact with certain bacteria, it comes in contact with soil. So, kind of cool. My first one, I'm going to talk about communal ownership, because I think that goes well with what you were just explaining.
Yeah, but that's not technology.
But I'm going to talk about some technologies within it. It's too late. I've already prepared 2 things.
She's already written it down.
Yeah, so communal ownership. But the first thing that I found when looking into this is open source ecology, which is a project that is creating these blueprints for everyday machines, or maybe not necessarily everyday to us, but everyday for people working on farms and stuff. So they're making these blueprints and guides on how to make a hay baler, how to make a saw from scratch.
Yeah.
And they're open source, so anyone can access them. And they have on their website a bunch of cool examples of how people have taken these blueprints and maybe changed them to make something even cooler.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these communal knowledge pools are a cool way to use the internet and to use this existing technology in a Solarpunk way.
Yeah, hugely. I always think, and this was on my mind a lot this week, of that thought experiment that if you went back in time 500 years or something, how would you actually be able to prove it? And most of us would really, really struggle because it's like, well, there's a light bulb. And they'd be like, build one. And you'd say, do you have any outlets? Do you have any plugs or something like that? So I always think we have access to this crazy high-tech world, but we're all kind of just, it's pets.
Basically.
But we need to be the owners.
Mm-hmm. So I think in the Solarpunk world, there'll be more of these open source communal tools. And of course, with communal ownership, there's the actual communal ownership of property and tools and stuff. And I think this is like very historic and very proven to have the ability to work if people are willing to. It's not necessarily a technology, but I still want to talk about it a little bit because we didn't get into it too much in the other 2 episodes.
It encompasses technologies. So.
Yes. So there's 3 types of cooperatives that I wanted to talk about. There's consumer cooperatives, which is where the customers own the business. This is kind of like MEC, where in order to shop there, you have to pay like $5 to get a membership. But then you're technically allowed to vote in any company changes or a board member changes and stuff. And I think in the Solarpunk world, co-ops will be the norm for how businesses are run. There's also co-ops where it's not just like customers are owners, but where perhaps like when we go to a market, every person who's selling is paying to be there and making the event run. Mm-hmm. I think there's just like cool ways to think about commerce and about getting what we need outside of the model that we're currently exposed to. And this also includes worker cooperatives where the workers own the business. So this is like Bob's Red Mill. When that shut down or was going to shut down, the owner decided to just give shares to all of the employees. And then they have a stake in it. They get dividends. And this is a very like economic way of doing it. But sometimes that can work too. And finally is residential cooperatives where perhaps the tenants of a building get together and buy the building from the landlord. And then when you own something, you're more likely to maybe repair it, upgrade it, all of these types of things and make it better. And not just when we are just renting a place, we're just getting by. There's no point in buying a new oven when we're not going to be able to use it in a year or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think the ownership, and then perhaps even when you're co-owner of a building and then you do eventually move, you get some money for it. You don't just leave and then all of your investment stays behind. So just thinking outside of the box when it comes to ownership of things. And within the Solarpunk economy, a big part of it is owning less. Because right now, our inclination when we need to fix the broken clothes rack is to go out and buy screwdrivers.
Yes.
Because we don't have anyone to borrow them from, or even just any place out on the corner that we could borrow them from. So instead we have to go and buy 6 different screwdrivers till we find the one that works. Mm-hmm. And then you're stuck with them, and it's kind of a waste of the materials needed. So just like sharing. Sharing is cool.
So futuristic.
I know.
I'll go for another really boring one, which is composters. Which I didn't know about. But these already exist. Mm-hmm. You can have them in your kitchen. You can have them under your sink. I was thinking about in the future they could just be some in public areas or on the street as well, which basically take about 24 hours from your apple cores and fish bones to nice, nutritious dirt. Mm-hmm. Ooh. And guess what? They are scent free.
It's pretty cool.
Ooh. Now what I was thinking about was how urban and dense Solarpunk is usually depicted. It's one of those details that doesn't really come across in the images, but okay, everything's green and recycly. Mm-hmm. But where are the big piles of rotting food? Probably don't want many of them in the city, right?
It's true.
And it also seems inefficient to be constantly toting them out to the landfill and then back in as soil for all of your urban farming.
Yeah.
So this is basically a really practical and boring solution to smell and I feel like pests. I feel like big piles of banana peels, as well as being a slipping hazard, would invite rats.
It's true. Yeah, it's cool that these technologies already exist. I think they're right now probably quite expensive.
Well, I looked online. I don't want to plug them, but you can buy them from like $300 to $800. That's Canadian monopoly money, so it might even be cheaper in other areas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think this is a really cool, and I like small devices that you can imagine being gentle and kind. Remember in the fashion semester, I said, if the garment was sentient, would it be nice?
Yeah.
Or would it be evil? These ones would be nice because you open them, you smell it. It's like when you smell like cookie dough. Because, I have that strange fascination with soil.
Yes, you're a big soil boy.
Well, I always want to eat it. But I think in Solarpunk futures, obviously people will be more aware, and so there will be less food waste in general. So it's not like you would have these going permanently. And I was thinking, like our tumble dryer, the second step in the laundry, has a very noteworthy sound, a jingle, if you will. Do you want to do a demonstration?
Do 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 do. Do 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 do.
Yeah,
very long.
It is incredibly. I think it's even longer than that.
It is,
but it could be something like that, melodic. Maybe you could program it yourself. But I want it to be like the kids come running downstairs. Like, I want to smell it. I want to smell it. Like how when they're baking, I want to lick the spoon. Yeah, like that, but not eating, not eating it.
We don't eat soil.
But I do think it would be magic for them in the same way that compost piles, it's a core memory of mine doing the field trip tour of the local garbage facility. I think this would be magical, and it's not like it replaces traditional composting. It just supplements it in cities. Yeah. And also I think it has I don't really believe entirely the corporate claim that it entirely eliminates methane emissions, but I can imagine it does so to an extent. And one of their big selling points is that it completely reduces the smell. Like it doesn't smell bad at all. Yeah,
because it's so quick.
It's so quick.
They don't really have a chance to rot.
They dry it, they mix it, and then they cool it. That's basically the process. But I was thinking there could be a slider. Okay. So that you're not completely detached from the process. Little stink. Big stink. Medium stink. Okay. I think there could be something. It could add a little bit of color to your life. And I was kind of contrasting this with drying clothes because I know that tumble dryers are not eco-friendly. They're often not touted as a great appliance. But the thing with tumble dryers is that clothes dryers, there's a very easy alternative, which is just to hang up the clothes. And there's no problem with doing that. Most places you can do it in cities. It doesn't attract pests. It's not even that slow. And it's pretty much fine. But with composting, there is a kind of a problem with doing it the traditional way. So that's why this is, I think, a fairer solution. And also, even with the electricity in the Solarpunk, the grid will be clean. So not so big a deal.
It's true. I've looked into different city composting methods. And besides these countertop ones, it is really hard because they attract pests. I find it cool, maybe if you lived in a slightly more rural area, the worm composting setups.
I was thinking about that. Worm
those
farms
are really cool.
Did you ever have an ant farm?
No.
I feel like those are Solarpunk in a way.
In a way, yeah. So speaking of tumble dryers, my next thing is called the Hydroloop. So this is an existing technology, but it's not very widely used. So it uses gray water, so water from dishes, dishwashers, showers, laundry, all those types of things, and it cleans it and then reuses it. But the coolest thing I found was that if you have a tumble dryer, it captures the evaporation from the clothes and uses that. So it could maybe even capture the sweat from the air and recycle it.
T-shirt juice.
Yeah. So it's just neat because it gives water a second life. And because the water is stored inside of the house, it then doesn't have to be warmed to be used again. So often when you're pumping in water in colder places like Canada, it has to be warmed in order to even be used in the washing machine.
Yeah.
Not warmed, like heated up, but just warmed to room temperature. So it's already at room temperature, which saves energy.
You're having a guest over and you give them a glass of water. And as they're taking a sip, you say, that's my bath water. And then they go, psst.
Exactly.
That's my spit take.
So with the Hydroloop, they do only reuse it for laundry, showers, gardens.
Okay.
They don't reuse it for faucets. But I imagine in a Solarpunk way, it could be used for everything.
Yeah.
It's already been recycled. Water's been recycled for...
Would you do that? Drink some toilet water?
It would take some getting used to, for sure. And I had, in conjunction with the Hydroloop, composting toilets, so toilets that don't use water, because then you don't have to worry about the recycling of the water from the toilets. You can just have them composting similar to the countertop composting bin.
Mm-hmm.
And one more cool thing about the Hydroloop is that it recycles the heat from the water. So you get a hot shower, and then the water runs through little pipes around your house until it cools to room temperature and it's giving off the heat.
Yeah.
So it's like reusing every element of the water experience.
I like that name. And I didn't pick anything kind of architectural for my technologies, but I like that this is one of them. It's kind of this interesting blend of really ancient techniques that have gone by the wayside regarding efficiency and new things like this. So I think it's neat. And before I get into my next one, let me talk about the organism of the week.
Do.
Robots.
Aaron!
What?
Robots aren't organisms.
Well, I came up with a Latin name for them anyway, which is Homo silica.
Okay, I like that.
So I drew one. If you want to describe it to the audience, this is my picture of a Solarpunk robot.
So it's a square with a handle and square eyes and rectangular legs.
Yeah, and it also has a...
It has a smile. Yes,
yeah.
labeled
smile.
smile.
Because it's to show that it's not evil.
Mm.
So...
It's true it doesn't look evil.
Exactly. I gave it the handle to give it that kind of friendly lunchbox GameCube feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I didn't draw a person there for scale, but I think it would only come up to like your hips.
Okay.
I want it to be just bip, boop, bip, boop. And I labeled this also, the legs are either magnetic or sticky. They can walk up walls.
Okay.
And this was kind of a question that I wanted to raise. I didn't include it with the technologies because I wasn't sure whether we really wanted this in the Solarpunk future. I know they're often touted. What do you think about robots?
You know how I feel about robots. I don't really like them.
Not even this guy?
He's cool, but I just don't like the idea of having these kind of humanoid, or even like, I don't know.
Let me ask you about microwaves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like them?
I could do without them.
You use it.
I do use it.
Would you use it if it had hands?
I guess.
What if instead of you pressing a button to open the door, you just held out the bowl and it had a hand that took it from you?
Okay.
Would you like that?
No.
So you don't like the human imitating-ness of it. You like it when they're more machine-like.
Yeah.
So when you watch how it's made, for instance, in the factories, those big claws, you have no issue with them.
I kind of do. They're
You
creepy.
do. They're creepy.
But that's just me. I think that robots can exist in the Solarpunk world, but for me, maybe my house would have none of them.
So I had some examples. There have been obviously lots of those industrial factory robots that aren't very cute and don't get cool names or numbers. I was thinking this guy's name could be like the B95600 or something like that. Okay. But they call him B9. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's a Star Wars droid. Lots and lots of tales and myths from ancient times that essentially amount to robots. In Jason and the Argonauts, I think, there's that guy on Crete, the big bronze guy. Mm-hmm. There's also Galatia from ancient Greece. There's from Jewish legend, there's like the golems, which are little clay things that kind of do people's bidding. All through the ancient world and medieval world, China, Japan, the Middle East, Europe, people have always been basically trying to build these, which I find really fascinating. Like there was some pretty detailed drawings that Leonardo da Vinci did of a little mechanical knight that he wanted to build. It's unclear whether he actually did. And then fast forward to today, of course, where we have those every 6 months creepy video by Boston Dynamics of this militarized looking dog that can sprint and do like gymnastics courses. Isn't that neat? Probably not, right?
Probably not. And it's hard to put my finger on why exactly they're so creepy to me.
This was my drawing. Obviously, what I included is key, but also what I omitted.
It doesn't have hands.
There's no hands or arms. So even if it turned evil, it can't get to you.
That's true.
So that was crucial. Unless it went to build them itself, which would be a whole other problem. But I'm not talking about so much the sentience, the AI angle, more the form factor of these guys.
Okay, so like they're machines.
Yeah.
Cool.
There was this, in 2006, Lego released a set called the Lego Mindstorms, which was basically a programmable robot kit that looked like a tiny little Wall-E. And I don't know, I just find those fun, little companions.
It is fun.
Similar to when a child will have their dog that they raise and grow up with. You can have your little robot.
Okay. I can see
Sparky or something like that.
Yeah. Inspired by the organisms of the week, we decided next week to start a new semester of organisms every week. But the organisms are humans. So we're going to be talking about each week a different person who will be a solacite, so a person who lives in the Solacene. And we're using mainly people who already exist or who have existed throughout history. And there'll be a few people that we invent.
Yeah.
So without giving too much away, tune in next week if you want to listen to our biography semester.
It'll be fun. And watch us on YouTube. And also, we have a new podcast graphic. So that's very exciting. Check out on the app. It no longer looks like it was drawn by a 3-year-old. I'm joking. It was a nice drawing that you did. But now it looks a little bit more exciting, inspiring, I guess. And yeah, we did 6 semesters of Solacene covering degrowth, education, the internet, nature, fashion, and storytelling. And now we're kind of hypothetically at least populating this world. So I think it'll be really fun discussions. Your next technology?
My next one will go with modular fashion. So we obviously did a whole semester on fashion, so I'm not going to get too much into it. But modular fashion is fashion that's designed to be taken apart and reassembled in different ways. This is historic. Through all of history, people have been creating garments that can be fixed or reimagined. But I think up until now, within high fashion, it's been quite gimmicky. And even when you go online and look at existing clothing brands that use this model, it's just like, well, you have a top and a skirt and they zip together into a dress. It's like, that's just called a shirt and a skirt.
Yeah.
But modular fashion can be a bit more cool. So maybe there's like a little panel in like the forearm that you can zip out and replace with a pocket.
Can you reimagine what I'm wearing now in a modular fashion outfit sense?
For sure. So the hood is going to be detachable.
Ooh,
so you can go hood or no hood.
Okay.
Probably just Velcro.
Boop, boop, rip.
A lot of them are zips, but that's just so bulky and heavy. So I think Velcro or ties. Ties look cool.
They do.
Maybe I'm just in my like coquette
And
era.
also hoodies already have often a
little tie there.
A rope.
Right. So that is detachable. Sleeves, perhaps detachable in 2 places. So you can go to short sleeve or no sleeve.
Sport mode.
Sport mode. Because what Aaron does is he just cuts his sleeves off, but then they're not actually reattachable.
The thing is, I have massive biceps, so I always want to...
Oh my God. Kiddo. And then for the pants, I don't really like the gimmicky, like, rip off at the knee, because when do you ever really need, like,
well, if you
shorts?
are wading.
Yeah, perhaps.
On the off chance we're wading.
But maybe what they could do is they could have changeable width.
Changeable width. What about inside out?
Inside out, that's
What about
cool.
sometimes you want the waterproof and sometimes you want the warm or something, something like that?
Yeah, I think that's cool. And then, yeah, everything has to be reversible. That's like...
That's a given.
It's a given, yeah. And then maybe you could have extra pockets that you can attach on with magnets or something. So I'll use a few examples of existing modular fashion that I think is cool. There's the Thneed from the Lorax.
The what is it?
The Thneed.
Oh, I don't know the need.
Oh, well...
Should I?
You should.
Okay.
The Thneed is a scarf-like thing that can be used as a shirt, a dress, a hat, a hood.
Okay.
Everything.
Sure.
And it was a symbol of capitalism in the Lorax and overconsumption. It actually breaks down to 2 words, the need.
Oh, okay.
If you
I'm not that.
are really reading into it.
I need to refamiliarize myself with the text.
Mm-hmm. And in 1998, Juan Takahashi created this line called Small Parts, and it was a whole clothing line where everything basically could be interchanged. Pant legs for sleeves and bags for shirts and stuff. It's pretty cool. And then right now, some existing ones are Martha Stance, and she has a coat model. So you can kind of invent your own perfect coat with hoods, rain hoods, liners, pockets, these types of things. And her color palette is a bit boring, and the price range is exorbitant, to say the least. For a base, it's 5,000 Canadian dollars.
Is there something a bit unpersonal about this? Is there something a bit mass-produced about saying, yeah, I've got the modular t-shirt the same as everybody? Because it's the opposite of tailoring and personalizing, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing, is in Solarpunk, it'll just be more how we design clothes.
I see.
It won't be like, yeah, I'm subscribing to the Nike modular format. It will just be kind of like, this is how clothes are made, to be repaired and taken apart and stuff.
That makes sense.
Because it's like how Patagonia has their jumpers in all different colors. It's that you take out a piece and replace it.
But you're saying grandma can make it instead of
Yves
Chouinard.
Yeah, exactly. But there's one really cool modular design that I wanted to shout out, that I shouted out to you last night. I was so excited. And it's called Petit Pli, which means little folds.
I kind of just went,
For my whole life, I've been imagining kids' clothes that just grow as the kids grow, and not in like a gimmicky, like you unzip it, These clothes, they look so space age, and they actually say on their website that they passed the Mars test, which means that they're lightweight, useful in different situations, and long lasting.
Is that a real test, or they just...
I think they might have made it up, but
okay.
I think we should adopt it for the Solacene, that everything should pass the Mars test.
Yeah, but maybe we can pick like
but
something more ambitious than Mars, like it passes the Saturn test.
Yeah. And I think it's cool. So these clothes, they're all like crinkly and folded, but then you can kind of like stretch them out as the kids stretch out. And then like the ankles and the waistband you can adjust, and they just look so cool. Go onto the website and just look at them. They have them for adults too, which is cool. So perhaps if you're going through pregnancy, or if you are a person who changes size throughout the day, like some of us.
Yeah, it reminds me of a Slinky.
It is like a
not
Slinky.
quite a Slinky, but what are those kids' toys that like... I guess they're like accordions,
like
but they're not musical. They remind me of those.
Yeah. So that's really cool. And then one more designer that I found is named Sophia Illuman, and she has a unisex and flexible sizing model, which is similar, shout out to us, to like how I was trying to design our clothing line, was with more flexible sizing. And it's hard for people to get used to, of just like buying a size that's kind of just like numbers or like a range. But it's good because humans change sizes, and then you can kind of keep it for longer, because the tendency is as you grow out of something or you change dimensions, you will get rid of it. But with flexible sizing, you can kind of imagine it. Perhaps at first it's a more oversized fit, and then it's like more snug, and then it's a little bit shorter or taller.
Seasons.
With the seasons, it goes on top or underneath. And it's just like, if you have it for longer, then you have more of a connection to it and you'll care for it. And I really liked about Sophia's line is that it's not boring. A lot of these modular designs are just like dreadfully boring looking because it's like, well, you want it to be timeless. It's like, but it can be timeless in like a cool way.
Yeah, go on the website linked in the description of either the YouTube or the podcast, and you will find Alicia's clothes and also Azine's new gilets this week. So exciting. Gilets, vests. My next technology is holograms.
Ooh.
And this is the one that I was most unsure of, and I was most kind of just, let's hash it out on air, because there is this question of an increasing blur between the digital and real worlds that in general I'm quite opposed to, which holograms might seem to kind of embody. But also I was thinking, in some senses, there could be a tactile element to their construction, kind of like a film projection. You know, like you need to be wearing you need to be wheeling the thing, feeding it through, looking at it. Maybe there could be something active to the holograms. And also it's just like, are they much worse than screens?
I think, that's what I was going to say is even in the Sol scene or in the Solarpunk world, there's going to be screens because we love, movies are cool.
But just not everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I don't like I'm in a forest, let me pull out my whatever. But maybe holograms are even in a way better than screens because they are more obviously digital. Like they have a kind of instinctive separation from a tree rather than screens, which kind of, I don't know.
I can see them being less addictive than screens. Perhaps just in, as you said, how they're made. Maybe they're made with a projection technology instead of a just blue light that's like sucking your soul.
It's very moot because they don't really exist. I mean, I was looking into it for quite a while. Holograms, I'm doing air quotes for people just listening, they exist. I'm doing them also. But I think they do so in the same way that a few years ago hoverboards existed.
Yeah, like flying cards exist.
No, but when people, remember on Vine with the hoverboards, people were like, I'm going to go down the street on my... And it's like, that's not what that means. That's not what that used to mean. It doesn't float.
Yeah,
so I think
has wheels.
I think people just kind of misuse the term, or when they're using it, they're referring more to the creation of an optical illusion involving mirrors and projections. And there is a lot of work being done on holograms. And I do think that it will exist, but that's also because I have been raised by cinema. So, in sci-fi, there's always holograms.
Yeah, it might be kind of like we were watching those drone
I wanted to
things.
mention those. Yeah, there was a YouTube video that we watched for some reason about a massive, incredibly American drone performance. That's right, drone performance of the Nutcracker on Christmas Day. And they were just floating above this American football field. How many were there? Like 800 or something like that? Or more?
Probably more, like 8,000. So yeah.
And they were just moving around and giving the illusion kind of the Nutcracker. And what we were kind of thinking of, wouldn't it only work on this one plane? Like if you were at any angle, wouldn't it just look like a bunch of lights? And you were kind of saying, think about how many crashes it's going to cause, how many car crashes.
Well, think about you're driving on the highway and you just think the aliens have come.
Yeah, in the form of the Nutcracker.
Yeah. But maybe the holograms could be like that, but like little minuscule drones that fly. Giving that idea out there, not for free.
They seem kind of like the alternate version of robots. It's like, which path are we going to take? And I know which one I prefer.
Well, yes, you prefer robots.
I want to be able to shake its tiny hand.
If they have hands.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, I have two more. My next one is going to be quick. Ground fridges.
That's an old technology.
It's a very old technology. It's been around since agriculture has, and probably before, with like wine cellars and stuff. But obviously we've gotten away from cellars. I think we need to go back to them.
Yeah, we need
just
a cellar.
Free, cold.
You need somewhere to hide.
Exactly. If there's a tornado, be like Dorothy, go down into the cellar.
Except she didn't. But you need somewhere to be, the kids can be afraid of. I don't want to go down there.
Get the potatoes. Get the tubers.
Get a wine.
Oh, God. So just bring back cellars. Ground Fridge is like a company. It's just called Ground Fridge. They really have a monopoly on that. Yeah. But that's just a plastic bulb that you put into the hole.
It kind of sucks that they were able to copyright that name.
Yeah.
Or trademark that name.
So cellars, pretty cool. I've been in one. Have you ever been in a cellar?
No. I've been in a basement. I've been in a crypt.
Okay.
Is it somewhere between those two things?
Somewhere between, yeah. Okay. So the cellar I was in was at a farm, so they keep the potatoes down there to be replanted the next year. And it's just cool. Very cold, and it's not that far underground. Like it's 3-4 feet.
Literally cool.
Yeah. And I just think it's very Solarpunk.
I feel like there's this feud between cellars and attics. Which you fall on the cellar side.
No, I like attics a lot.
You have to hunch.
I always had this fantasy of living in our attic.
Of course. So did I.
My parents were like, you can't.
Yeah, ours was about 2 feet tall, if that.
Yeah.
But also, then you'd go and watch Drake and Josh and be like, but I could make it work. I think they live in the attic.
Yeah.
So my next one is resource use tracking. Mine is so boring this week. I really wanted to come up with something, but then I thought people aren't going to like if I talk about electric frogs or something. So resource use tracking as in water, electricity, those tiny panels that go on the front of your house that just say numbers that you're like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah, and you have to have someone come in to read the meter.
Yeah, read it. But I think in the Solarpunk, we will have that language. We'll be able to read it ourselves. And also it won't be just tied to your house. As far as I know, there isn't a current way to also include charge that you get from elsewhere, i.e. if you charge your phone at work or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also with how decentralized things like energy will be in a Solarpunk future compared to how they are now, it would be an important, like a genuinely important way rather than just a kind of optional hobby, an important way of keeping track of what you collect, i.e. through, let's say, rooftop solar panels, and what you use, and days of the week, times of day, months of the year. And I think it also kind of, in a way, gamifies resource use, and that would be very helpful because I know a lot of people really are weirdly into those step counts that the iPhone does. And that's like an incredibly, it seems to me, rudimentary pedometer, but people really like it. And I think it does make them go for more walks, as strange as that sounds. And so I think I know for me, I'd be like, oh, I want to beat my last week for energy use. And it would help you, even things like the passive energy from when something is plugged in but not being used. Like maybe it would make you want to unplug your television or something like that.
Yeah, it would make you think about cool ways to maybe you invent the hydro loop. It's like, well, I have all this heat from the shower. I could use that to heat the apartment for an hour instead of turning on the heater.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just make you think outside of the box a bit more about your energy use. And as you said, things would be more decentralized. So perhaps your water comes from a well and your energy comes from your tiny windmill.
Yeah, I think if someone was suggesting this to me today, because I'm sure it does exist, like I'm sure there are home energy trackers that will let you, and maybe there's a accompanying app that's really frustrating to try and sync, but maybe it does exist, but it takes a few steps. I think today you'd be a little bit less inclined to do so because the idea of the carbon footprint seems so kind of 10 years ago and very misguided when we know about corporations and governments and their emissions compared to us leaving the television plugged in. But I think in the Solarpunk, that personal responsibility will be more of what we care about and will be a more sizable chunk of total emissions. And so it will actually be a worthwhile thing. And also, it's kind of in keeping with the punk suffix because you often get the sense that corporations don't want you to know these things, that they don't want to make it intuitive to track your energy use and money. And even when you go to a grocery store and it'll be like apples, this price per pound. And it's like, okay, there aren't any scales anywhere. I always complain about that because like they don't want you to be able to weigh it, right? Like they don't actually want you to know how much it weighs.
Yeah.
So it's kind of punk like that.
It is.
Knowledge is punk.
Knowledge is punk. And my final technology is about knowledge. And again, it's not a technology, it's more of a system.
We had one prompt and now you're saying, actually,
it's called student-led universities. So these kind of exist already, and I didn't realize that. I knew that there's like 1 or 2 universities where you would create your own program, but actually a decent amount of universities have individualized study majors. But in a Solarpunk world, I think this will be much more common, mainly because people will go to university for the sake of passion instead of because you feel like you need to or else you can't get a job as a front desk worker somewhere because for some reason you need a university degree to do that.
Eduflation.
Yeah. So it'll be more individualized, and I have this vision of people, the students perhaps at the beginning of the year getting together and hiring the staff.
Okay.
And like not necessarily all of the staff, but maybe they're like, there's this course that we have imagined. Perhaps it's a course where we are taught how to program house pets.
It sounds a little bit, what?
House pet, the robots.
Oh, robots.
Yeah, not real house pets.
Okay.
That's what I'm calling them. So where we learn to program these, but there's not it's not currently being taught here, but we know this guy from the community who's really good at it. Could he teach this course?
Isn't there a saying, it's like the chickens are running the hen house or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
What's the saying?
I think that's it.
So it sounds a little bit like that.
But the thing is, people will be a bit more, they're not going to try and just have all courses like the history of rock and roll.
No, but I mean, they're still not going to know what's best.
Yeah, but that's why there's still a board of like, it's a whole system.
There are some grown-ups.
There are some grown-ups. It's like run by elected members of a board, and they have to approve stuff, but the students have more of a say in what's offered.
Okay, and why is it Solarpunk?
It's cooperative. It's reclaiming the education system, because right now the education system is quite a machine for making money, but the new Solarpunk education system will not be a machine for making money, it will be a machine for learning.
The thing is, I like the idea of a Dumbledore headmaster.
Yeah, I know.
You don't like that idea?
I think it can work. But I think in some situations there could be these schools that are more for like creating these really unique, like my major is in plant biology and tree root systems chemistry, like just really specific things which they can then go on to research and like make new developments. Whereas right now it's like you'd have to do first year biology undergrad, then your master's of biology, and then like 4 or 5 degrees later, then you can get into the tree root biology.
Well, one thing we talked about in our education semester was the idea of people graduating less so via checkpoints, as in exams and kind of quantified knowledge like that, and more so having a portfolio, whatever your course, be it in the arts, which is obvious, but even if you're in some kind of STEM, having a portfolio of things that exists as a more reflective diploma, I suppose, something you could show potential employers after graduation, which I guess there would be a bit more of a self-directed, like a thesis thing to that, even for undergrads, even for high school students.
Yeah.
So I do think some more decision-making going to the students is a good idea, because we kind of treat 20-year-olds as if they're still 10-year-olds. Did you ever do those student-led parent-teacher conferences when you were in grade school?
I don't really remember.
We had those.
Okay. That just sounds like a bad idea.
It was.
Because you're kids.
Yeah.
But when you graduate high school, you should be adults. Like, that should be the goal of the system right now.
I get it.
So you'll graduate with like, obviously they know math and social science and stuff. So then they can specialize in university. And also there'll be ongoing kind of free lectures going on. And like these alternative methods of education besides the university system will be valued as well. So it's like you don't need the university degree. You could maybe go to a community workshop on welding, and then you can become a welder. Like it's just, there's different routes.
Yeah.
I think it's punk. But maybe I'm just a nerd.
No, you're punk. My last one is solar-powered devices. Solar phones, solar watches. Actually, we also did an episode about what the ideal technological ecosystem would be in the future. So if you want to look at the specifics of which devices I'm talking about, you can listen to that episode. I think it was in our 4th semester about the internet. Yeah. Or perhaps the 5th one. But solar-powered phones have existed and do exist. There's been a lot of work, even by like the biggest companies. Apple has, looked into it. Samsung released phones in like the 2000s. They look really terrible. And in the present day, it's rather inefficient because there's a small surface area and the phones need to be turned on their back. And also just like capturing energy from the sun through a small PV cell is literally inefficient. So you could have it out there for like an hour and it'll give you like a minute or something like that. But in the Solarpunk world, we can kind of just say it's all that much better, that it will be completely feasible. And I also think it would kind of, again, gamify the process, or take a little bit from the Pokemon Go ethos where the developers were like, let's get kids outside. And so rather than being tethered to the wall or to their wireless charger, they would have to go outside, and when they're outside, hey, there's that tree, I'll climb it, and then there's kind of a close-up of the phone dropping from their hand because they get distracted, which is what we want.
Yes.
The real world to take precedence. So that was kind of my vision, heavily inspired by when I was a kid, we had one of those kinetic flashlights that was charged by wheeling it. I think that was a very 2000s thing.
It was. I forgot about those.
Did you have one?
Yeah.
It was so gimmicky.
Oh, yeah.
And the charge didn't last very long, but I was very enamored by it. Ours was black and gray, and it was just this idea of, because I didn't know what electricity was, still don't, didn't really know how things were powered. So it's just like, I can plug this in, or I can just, why wouldn't I just do this? Mm-hmm. And so I just did that a lot. It was very noisy, and the light was just really weak.
Yeah.
And I remember once I went on some kind of weird overnight school trip where we went kind of camping or hiking somewhere. I don't remember. Weird. I was probably about 6. But everyone, it was like, bring your flashlights.
And you brought that one.
And I brought that one. And it was just terrible compared to everybody else. Mm-hmm. We were just like skulking around in the dark. And it would maybe otherwise be quite a scenic, because it was a naturey place. If you just had this constant whirring of my flashlight. But it really captured my imagination. So that's what I'm picturing. Also, there's a lot of solar watches that already exist, even some solar smartwatches.
Oh, really?
And those are a lot more feasible than phones. So
that's interesting. Yeah, what about a kinetic phone? It's powered by your steps.
Ooh.
So it would kind of take or maybe it could even just be like artificially like that.
You mean pretending to be?
Yeah, so it's like you need 1,000 steps to get 10 minutes on your phone.
I feel like people would just not buy that phone.
It's the only option. Thank you all for listening. We cannot wait for our next semester. So see you on Monday for a new semester of Solacene.